Hello and welcome to this new video from 3D Quakers. In this video I want to showcase the new features of Forester for Cinema 4D Release 20. If you look at this splash page from our website, we see a landscape with trees scattered on top of it. If you look carefully at the trees, we see that they are distributed in patches, meaning that we have areas that have a certain type of trees while other areas have a different type of trees. Also, if we look really closely, we see that the trees have a random color variation, meaning that no two trees have the exact same color. And this has to do with a parameter that we introduced to the MultiCloner module of Forester, where we can randomize instance colors. We're going to see how to create something like this with Forester and how to render it with Redshift. So let's get started. Here we have a simple landscape which is created with the Cinema 4D landscape object, and we want to scatter some trees on this landscape to create a really dense forest. Now, whenever we are scattering thousands or even millions of trees, we need to make sure that these trees are optimized. Optimization means that we need to have a good shape for the tree while still retaining the lowest possible polygon count. Now, since Forester is a procedural system, we can reduce the polygons as much as we want. So for example, if I create a simple Forester tree, we can go to the branch global and change the number of segments for the branches as well as the number of sides. We can do the same thing for the trunk and for the leaves. In order not to waste any time doing that now, I'm going to use the Forester expansion pack 1, where we can create different versions of the same tree, being adult, young, and in our case here we want it to be low poly, meaning that it's going to have a nice visual appearance, especially when seen from a distance, and at the same time have a very low polygon count. This is good whenever we are scattering trees on a mountain. Also, with the expansion pack, we can create different material types. In our case here, we're going to be using Redshift, so I'm going to be creating Redshift materials for this tree. So all you have to do is create your trees and just click on Add Materials to selected tree. So here I have one tree. I'm going to move it to the side. I'll create another tree, and then I'll create that one here. So now we have three different types of trees. Let's say that I didn't like this tree. All I have to do is go to Modify Selected Tree, and I can choose a different type from the library. For example, I'm going to choose this one just so that we have different heights for the trees. Now, of course, you can change the height procedurally, but I'm going to stick with the ones that we have from the library. Alright, now it's time to create the materials. So what we need to do is select the actual tree and select the render engine and click on Add Material to Selected Tree, and this will create the materials for the selected render engine. You can choose between the different seasons. For example, I'm going to choose summer for this one, which will create darker green colors. And for that one, I'm going to choose fall, which will create yellow-orange colors. So now we have three distinct colors for the trees. The reason I'm using the expansion pack is that I don't have to go and change the parameters to reduce the polygon density manually. This is done for us automatically. At any time though, I can go, for example, to the leaves and just change the distribution so that we don't have so much density, and we can at any time increase the leaf size just to fill up the volume. Alright, so I'm pretty happy with the trees that we have here. Next, what I want to do is use the MultiCloner in Forester to scatter these trees over this terrain. So what I will do is add a MultiCloner and select all three trees and make them a child of the MultiCloner. Then I need to set the landscape as the distribution geometry. So I'll drag it down here, and right away the trees disappear and we have these points appearing, showing us where the trees will be scattered over the landscape. Now, in case you wanted to go back to the trees to edit them visually, all you have to do is just deactivate the multi-cloner and the trees will become visible again. Now, if we want to see them displayed on the landscape, we uncheck display points, and here we need to reduce the size so that we can scatter as many trees as we can over this landscape. Alright, it is scattered, but we see that the trees are actually normal or perpendicular to the surface on which they are scattered. To make them upright, all you have to do is scroll down to verticalize and increase the verticalized value. This will make them go upright. Now you can go all the way to 1, but I like to give them some leaning just to keep everything more natural. Forester distributes the trees on the landscape by area. To see this without having to clutter the scene too much, we're going to go back to display points, and the display points will show the points whenever the multi-cloner is selected, or whenever you click on keep points visible. Alright, and these are the points displayed over here. Now we can go down to the clone count and increase that, say, to 10,000, and this will show us the distribution of the trees on the landscape. Now there is a certain pattern which is not very visible right now. For the distribution, to make it even more visible, I'm going to go up to the distribution section and increase the distribution turbulence scale. What this will do is actually show us how the trees will be distributed over the landscape. So now we start to see where we're going to have an area where we have one type of tree and then we have another type and so forth. To make it even more visible, we can increase the brightness to see the separation much more clearly. So here we have one type, there we have the other, and the bright ones are the third. So let's say that we don't like this distribution and we want to change it. You can randomize the multi-cloner, or you can actually go down to the distribution turbulence phase and change that. This will only change the distribution pattern over the landscape. Now these colors that we see over here are also going to be used in the rendering if we so desire. This is coming from the point color, so if we want to color the trees red for some reason, we can change the color from here, and this red color will be added to the trees later on. I'm going to go back to the green and set the brightening value to 0.5 because this will keep the colors a bit more natural. Now what we want to do is actually change the color of the trees individually so that we have even more natural randomization, and this is where the randomized color comes in. So if we increase that value, we're going to randomize the tree color. So now we see that we have orange brown trees in addition to the green trees. The more we increase this parameter, the stronger is going to be the discoloration, until we get really strange colors. Now this is up to the user depending on the look that you're after, but if you want to keep everything natural and realistic, you should stick to values less than 0.2. So in this case I'm going to choose 0.2, and this will give me very nice brown colors in addition to the yellow and the green. So we're going to set Redshift as our current renderer. We're going to activate global illumination, and we're going to give this a render. So right away we see that the trees are scattered according to the pattern that we saw earlier. We're going to be adding some lights to see the shadows and the depth of the scene more clearly. So let's go to Redshift, Objects, and we're going to choose Sun and Sky Rig. Also, to be able to manipulate the sun easily, I'm going to add a null. I'll select the Redshift Sun and add a target tag and place the null as my target, which means that now I can take the sun and lift it up and move it any way I want, and that way I can direct the sun in a much easier way. If I give this a render now, we're going to see that we have much better definition for the scene because we can actually see the volume of the trees and the shadows. Okay, that's very nice. We see that everything calculates very fast. the number of trees that I added here so far is 10,000. Let's push this up to 100,000. So I'm gonna set the render count multiplier to 10, which means that in the viewport it's still gonna be 10,000, which makes the navigation super smooth, while in the rendering we're gonna get 100,000. But because I have a lot more trees, I need to reduce the clone size. Let's go to 0.01 and see what we get with that. Now if you look at the preparation time, we see that it's around 10 seconds before the rendering starts, which is very fast for 100,000 trees. Alright, so here we have a very dense scene with a lot of trees, and it's very nice, but all the trees that are part of the same group have the exact same color. And also I would like to mix up the edges so that we don't have so much well-defined edges for the scattering. So we start with that thing. To actually mix up the edges, all I have to do is increase the fine distribution. Now to actually see it properly, I'm gonna go back and reduce the randomized color and increase the fine distribution. That way the trees that are part of different groups are gonna be mixed up together according to this value. So I'm gonna go by a value of 0.2. Now we saw that in the rendering, the randomized color was not taken into account whatsoever. So that's what we're gonna do now. There is one more thing that I want to do before I work on the randomization of the color, and that is the turbulization of the size by area. So I'm gonna increase the turbulization to 0.5, which means that by area, and that is the size of the area, I'm gonna have trees that are bigger or smaller than their neighbors. So let's give that a render before we work on the color randomization. So here we see that we have much finer mixing of the trees compared to what we had before. Okay, so that's very nice. Now at any time, if I don't like the color of the trees, I can change them easily. For example, let's say I don't like the bright green. The bright green is for the field maple, which is this material over here. If I didn't like it, all I have to do is go back to the field maple, which is number 5, and that's it. So it's selected. All I have to do is select, for example, a summer color and choose add material to selected tree. It's already selected, and see what's going to happen with that material. Actually over here it's going to change. So if I want to change the tree altogether, I can select it and choose modify selected tree, and I would select under low poly this tree from here and choose add material to selected tree, and that's going to give me a darker green. Now if I want to delete the materials that are not used, all I have to do is click on remove unused materials. Okay, now the fig tree, which is number 33, if I scroll down to that, I don't really like its color, so I want to change it. So I'll select the tree and choose summer and add material to selected tree, and that's going to give me a darker color. Again, remove unused materials from here. Okay, so that's good. Now to speed things up, I'm gonna reduce the count to 10,000 again, go to 0.02 and give that a render. Okay, so the colors now are more natural, but we need to vary them because they all look the same. I'm gonna fiddle with the materials a bit more. Alright, so now the colors are more varied. which is good. Rendering this from a top view will give us the actual colors of the trees. Now, if I want to see this with the render view, of course I can. So let's say I want to change the amount of trees. All I have to do is just take this down, say to 1000, increase the clone size, increase that, say to 25,000. But of course I have to reduce the clone size and so forth. So everything is perfectly editable in the render view. Alright, so let's try 0.015 because I don't want to leave too many gaps where the ground is showing. So okay, maybe 0.02. This is the clone size, is the best value to use here. Okay, so that's good. What I want to do now is actually vary the colors. Now let's randomize the colors of the trees. First, I need to remove any unused materials just to focus on the materials at hand. We need to work on these three materials for the leaves and vary their colors according to the randomized color value, which we can change after the fact and see the result update instantly. So we're going to open the Forester expansion pack, and here I see that I made a mistake when I created these materials. I forgot to set Redshift as my renderer of choice, and this is actually very easy to fix. All I have to do is select the tree that we need to work on and choose Redshift as my render engine and choose add material to select a tree, and this will swap out the material into a Redshift material. Alright, we need to do the same thing for this tree here, the fig tree, and we're gonna remove the unused materials. So now all three material types are Redshift materials. Okay, so let's start with the first material and edit the shader graph. So the Forester expansion pack creates the Redshift materials right away. What we need to do actually is add a node that would read out the random color from here. And it's very easy. All I have to do is go to Utilities and User Data and choose Color User Data. And here under Attribute Name, I'm going to choose Object and Object Color. Then I need to get a Mix node and choose Color Mix. And I'll set the color user data to the input 2, and I'll set the mix amount to 0.75. Now, since I'm going to be using this for all three materials, I'm going to select these two nodes and choose Edit Copy. Alright, now all I have to do is take the leaf texture and plug it into input 1 and feed the out color of the color mix into the diffuse color and the translucency color. And that's it. I'll repeat the same thing for this one here. Now, since I copied the nodes, I can paste them. I can plug this texture into input 1 and then feed the color mix into the diffuse and the translucency color. And the last one is that one here. Now, since I already set the mix amount to 0.75, all three materials are going to have a mix amount of 0.75, which means that it's going to take 75% of the user data color, which is the object color coming from this color over here mixed with the randomization factor. So that's it. All I have to do now is give this a render, and magically we're going to see that the trees have randomized colors according to the values that we specified. Alright, very nice. The trees have these colors. Now the overall green is coming from this color over here. So to make the scene more natural, we're going to take this color and desaturate it like this. and set the randomization factor to 0.15. So if we go to the render view, we're gonna see the result displayed like so. So that's it. Everything is beautiful and natural looking, and this is coming from this color here that I desaturated and the randomization. If I want to make it even more random, I'll set it, say, to 0.5, and this will actually increase the color randomization to make the landscape in this case a bit more harsh and dark. But otherwise I would stick to a value of 0.2. Let's go for 0.25. Yeah, 0.25 is beautiful. So all I have to do now is actually play with the position of the sun to get. So let's lock this view. Now to make things display a bit faster, I'm gonna uncheck keep points visible just to hide the points in the view, and I'll just take the sun object and I'll move it around and see the lighting change in real time like so. And this is how this scene was created. There is one more thing that this scene has, and that is the definition of the trees. The trees here appear higher resolution than the trees that we just worked on. This is coming from the fact that I used, instead of using the low poly trees, I used the young trees. Now to switch between the low poly and the young trees, all I have to do is click on modify selected tree. So if I select the fig tree, I'm gonna actually disable the multi-cloner for now just to see the result here in the viewport. To switch to the young version, all you have to do is click on modify selected tree, scroll down to the fig tree, which is number 33, and click, and now we're gonna have the young version, which takes slightly more time to render, but the additional time is in seconds and not more. Let's select this one here, that's number 2. Again, I'll click and I'll get a much higher resolution tree. Now, of course, the tree has a maximum level count of 3. Here in the viewport, it's just 2. If I want to see it 3 in the viewport, I would increase that value here, but this will make your whole scene slightly slower. So it's best to keep this to a lower value unless you are rendering with the render view. Then you would have to increase that to the render levels to see the result display in the render view. And I'll do the same for this one here. This is number 4. So I click here, and now we have a higher resolution tree. Now whenever I render, we're gonna get the trees render in much higher definition and make the scene even more realistic. So this is how I change the color variation of the trees using the multi-cloner and the multi-instances feature of the multi-cloner to have super fast rendering of huge number of trees while retaining the possibility to change their overall color and randomize the leaf colors per tree. I hope you enjoyed this video, and thank you for watching.